Раз. Ladies and gentlemen, let's start. In light of unprecedented full-scale invasion faced by the Ukraine energy sector, uh, the urgency of addressing the infrastructure renovation, the renewable energy development, and innovative financing is getting its critical point. Winter is coming, and it is even more important right now to think about how to help Ukrainian energy sector to be resilient as it is right now. Today we are talking about powering Ukraine's future, financing breakthrough in energy reconstruction, and we will talk about some topics like modernization, transition to renewable energy as an environment necessity and economic opportunity for Ukraine. We'll talk also about innovative financial solutions and partnership. I'm Tatiana Sakharuk, the United Nations Global Compact Network Ukraine representative, and my speakers today are Jeffrey Pyatt, the US I'm sorry, Jeffrey, Assistant Secretary, Bureau of Energy Resources, U.S. Department of State. Maxim Timchenko, CEO at DTEC. Roger Martella, Chief Sustainability Officer, GE Vernona. And Hama Zamazieva, Head of the State Agency on Energy Efficiency and Energy Saving of Ukraine. Thank you very much for being here today, and thank you for joining our session. Roger, Jeffrey, I will start from you. At United Nations General Assembly, the United Nations, the United States of America and G7 group made a statement on Ukraine's energy sector support, saying that rebuilding Ukraine's energy system in the short and long term is the interest of enhancing global energy security and sustainability. My question to you is how the U.S. Department of State prioritizing immediate energy infrastructure needs in Ukraine and long-term plans.
Thank you very much, Tatiana, and thank everybody for coming out this morning. I was talking with Maxime and Roger before we began about the journey that we've all been through over the past 2.5 years since the start of the full-scale invasion. And I made the point to Maxime that
Jeffrey, can you?
I made I was and Roger the two since the start of the full-scale invasion, and made the point that the department has led to support Ukraine's resilience is quite simply the most important work that we do, because Ukraine's future, Ukraine's sovereignty is fundamental to American and international security, but also because the energy issues have become so central to Putin's larger campaign, his original effort to divide Europe, which failed spectacularly, and then his efforts over what is now coming the third winter to weaponize the winter against the people of Ukraine. You asked about how we set priorities in the context of the G7 plus group, which Secretary of State Blinken launched in 2022, soon after Putin began his attacks on energy infrastructure. I think of this effort as being simultaneously both a marathon and a sprint. The sprint involves all the work that we are doing day to day across the G7 plus to restore capacity in the Ukrainian energy grid, recognizing the humanitarian consequences of all the destruction that Putin has rained down on the people of Ukraine over the past 2.5 years, recognizing the continued threat. And I worry a little bit that the nightly Shahed attacks have now sort of disappeared into the headlines. We've become routinized to the idea that every night there are going to be 300, 400 Shahed missiles targeting generation, transmission, apartment buildings, hospitals, and schools. The United States, just since March, when Putin began his effort to destroy generation capacity, the United States has mobilized $825 million in additional energy sector assistance. And across our coalition, we've mobilized more than $2 billion of assistance. This is going for generators, for half of DTEC, and I was congratulating Maxime also. It's a terrific Wall Street Journal article that everybody here should read. It ran over the weekend describing the heroic efforts that Ukraine's energy workers have been making to restore capacity. But even as we are trying to rebuild resilience in the grid before the winter, and in any scenario, this is going to be a very difficult winter for the people of Ukraine. We also need to position Ukraine for its long-term success, for its future membership in the European Union, and to support all of the work that the Ukrainian Ministry of Energy, Prime Minister Shmyhal, and the rest of the government have undertaken to advance reform, to build an energy sector that is fully aligned with European standards in terms of corporate governance, in terms of transparency, in terms of unbundling and competition policy, but also to find the levers that we can use to help facilitate the transformation of Ukraine's energy system. I always make the point to private sector audiences that it's wrong to think of Ukraine as a charity case, that it's actually a tremendous opportunity for Europe, a Europe which is never going to turn back to Russia as a principal source of energy supply, where Ukraine's significant resources in terms of wind, solar, nuclear, biomass, all have the potential to return Ukraine to the status of being a major energy exporter to the rest of Europe. So in that context, the work that we're doing with companies like GE Vernova to help Ukraine think about the structure of a future energy system which doesn't rebuild the post-Soviet highly centralized energy grid that Ukraine inherited upon its independence, but rather builds a future decentralized and inherently resilient energy system. So these are difficult days for Ukraine and the people. I'm confident of the United States enduring support in this sector in our Congress, which have provided all of those resources that I've talked about that the United States is providing in the energy sector. But I think especially as we look to 2025 and the expectation that there will be an inflection point in terms of the war during the course of the next year, the role of the private sector in investment is going to become front and center. The United States, the whole U.S. government enterprise, our Development Finance Corporation, our Export-Import Bank, the White House, State Department, Department of Energy, USAID, we are all aligned in our focus on how to support American companies to identify opportunities in Ukraine. Our Development Finance Corporation has just announced a new insurance product working with Aon, which will be specifically designed to support, among other things, renewable energy projects. And the destroyed solar panel from Mykolaiv on the wall here reminds us why that's important. But I want to underline our commitment to focus on this sector, but also our confidence about Ukraine's long-term energy future.
Thank you so much, but I cannot avoid this question. I believe that every Ukrainian is looking for the future, and we need to understand how the U.S. attitude to Ukraine may change with the recent American changes in politics.
So I can't speak for the incoming Trump administration. I can speak for President Biden, and I know how hard the United States has worked over multiple presidential administrations now, starting with President Obama through the first Trump administration, and through the Biden administration to support the sovereign right of the Ukrainian people to choose their own future. The other thing I will say is Americans like winners, and the kind of resilience that Ukrainians have demonstrated over the past 2.5 years is extraordinary. I mean, we have to remember when this full-scale invasion began in February of 2022, Putin thought that his soldiers were going to have a 2-week march to Kyiv and that Ukraine would collapse. That has not happened. Russia has paid a terrible, terrible price for Putin's aggression in terms of the hundreds of thousands of soldiers, Russian soldiers who have died on the invasion battlefield, but also in terms of Russia's loss of its place in the international system. The energy sector, to take one example, the International Energy Agency projects that Russia by 2030 will have lost 50%, 50% of its oil and gas revenue. And we tend to lose track of just how much capacity Russia is losing because all of our technology service providers, Baker Hughes, Halliburton, have withdrawn from the Russian market. Russia's production of gas and oil is inevitably declining. There was a great Economist article this weekend talking about how successful our sanctions actions against the Russian LNG industry have been. And as we look to the future, when I see stories in the Financial Times about Russia looking to consolidate the three big state oil companies, what that tells to me is they're trying to survive and our sanctions are working. So I can't speak for the incoming administration, but I will say if you look at the votes that have happened in our Congress and the resonance that Ukraine's battle for its independence and sovereignty has with American citizens, you see, I mean, last example I'll use, we have friends who live in Western North Carolina. I've traveled there 3 summers in a row, a state that just voted for President Trump overwhelmingly. But every town you go through, you'll see Ukrainian flags on the front porches. And I think that will be a factor as our politics works through this transition process.
Thank you very much. That's important for us. Maxim, we have already mentioned about the article of Wall Street Journal that told the incredible story of the tech teams on how they moved thousands of tons of equipment from one power plant station in a front line to those which were damaged by Russian attacks. And it demonstrates resilience of your company and great resilience of people who did that for millions of Ukrainian families who got their warm homes. Could you please elaborate a little bit more about your future plans? What are current needs of GTEC and what do you expect in the future?
Thank you. I think it's good event. It's symbolic that we have such a company gathering here, not first time. But first of all, I would like to use this opportunity to say my words of appreciation to Jeff Pyatt and for your team. And I can responsibly say, knowing a lot from inside, that Ukraine would not survive these 2 winters, would not survive 3rd winter without your personal commitment, personal efforts, and with support of all your team and US government. Thank you very much appreciated. And it brought us not only support, but confidence that coming winter, we will survive. We'll go through this winter. To be honest, for me, looking at our facilities after destruction in March, April, June this year, that we can be in the position saying that we go through this winter relying on our own generation capacity. So we managed to restore more than 70% what was damaged and destructed. We found different ways how to make this program, including Kurakhova power station. Now we can say it loudly. From June, we started dismantling the whole power station, bringing all pieces of equipment transportable to relocate to other power station in the western part of Ukraine. And because of this decision and all our people doing this very, very difficult, logistically difficult exercise, we in good position now. And what I'm saying, we're in the hands of air defense forces for the next several months. But my message is that today we should start thinking not only about coming weeks or months, but about winter 25-26 and about winter 26-27 and over the next years. We shouldn't be in a position in 1 year time saying either we survive winter or not, or what should be done. We should be start preparing now and preparing not only by restoration of what was destroyed or damaged, but building new. I'm very glad that we discussed a very concrete project with GE Vernova about bringing gas turbines in Ukraine to be installed by next winter. I'm glad that we are part of battery storage program in Ukraine. Then October next year, we'll build 200 megawatt battery storage facilities. We are glad that finally we come into financial closer to our project, Iligul project, which by the way, we signed during the COP in Dubai. We signed MOU with Vestas and we'll start construction hopefully next month, building 384 megawatt of wind park, investing 450 million euro in Ukraine. So as probably you know, the tech invested more than 1 billion euro during the years of war in Ukraine. It's not only demonstration of our commitment to Ukraine, but also our belief that Ukraine not only survive over the next winter or next winters, but survive as an independent state and as one of the major partner of European Union in terms of energy security. And the tech, of course, want to be part of this story, and we will do everything what depends on us so that we strengthen our position in Ukraine, position of energy sector, and also building future of Ukrainian energy sector in European Union.
Thank you so much. Roger, my question to you. Earlier this year, GE Vernova committed to boost American wind power, Ukrainian wind power, and storage. Could you please elaborate on how you can leverage your expertise to help Ukrainian energy system?
Well, thank you for the question and thank you for the honor of including us as a voice of the private sector here. Stage.
Closer.
Thank you very much. Okay. So GE Vernova was basically founded 130 years ago by Thomas Edison when he started the electrification revolution. And today we help provide 25% of the world's energy with our equipment. And it's our mission that kids can turn the lights on everywhere in the world to feel safe and secure, that parents can have access to economic opportunities, that people have access to healthcare. Energy is prosperity. And when someone targets someone's energy, like, we take that very seriously. So aligned to Secretary Pyatt, there's been nothing more important we've done as a company, that I've done as one of our leaders, than to make sure that we're helping keeping the lights on in Ukraine in any role that we can. But I can't take any credit for that because, frankly, as a company that's been doing this for 130 years, we are in awe of what the leaders in Ukraine have been able to do to provide power under the most difficult circumstances. And frankly, we're humbled by that. We're learning from them. And our role is to find how can we help? How can we be additive? How can we contribute? So we face a couple challenges here. Some of those are the nature of where we find ourselves. The realities when you're talking when you're talking about grid equipment, we're in a super cycle where the world is not just Ukraine, the world is demanding this type of equipment. And so we have years and years of backlog. And so we as a company, if we're going to align to our commitment to Ukraine, the people of Ukraine, we have to be very creative in terms of we don't have this technology sitting on shelves. How can we go out to our customers? How can we go find technology so we can put Ukraine at the front of the line and try to get the equipment they need? And the second is this is a risky environment. Businesses, love to work where the environments are as low risk as possible, but we have an obligation here to make sure we're prioritizing Ukraine, supporting them. So that's where Secretary Pyatt comes in, that's where Max comes in. It's the theme of partnership, and this public-private partnership has been unprecedented in my career in terms of de-risking the environment so we can succeed in getting the equipment to Ukraine. So we've been proud to solve this in real time. It hasn't been perfect. We've learned a lot, but we get better at it every day. And we're proud of where we are today. I think in terms of, thanks to Secretary Pyatt, thanks to DTEC, thanks to the Minister Galyushenko and others who have been so creative and working with us to set up for success. So in terms of how we think about where do we go from here, we think of 3 phases. First is the winter. The most important thing we can do is to provide the emergency equipment that's necessary to help the grid operators in Ukraine keep the lights on. So some of that is just power generation. We've been proud to be the first company to ship, thanks to the support of the US government, and operate turbines in Ukraine that are providing power right now. Imagine a gas generator on the back of a truck trailer that you can move strategically around the country, can provide power for 100,000 homes. These things, frankly, weren't designed to run 24 hours a day. They were designed to kind of be in a world of the energy transition where they're ramping up and ramping down as needed. But Ukraine's running them at base load to help, and we're proud of that, that they're running, in a way that perhaps we hadn't really intended, but they're running very well in a way to help meet this need. So power generation is one. Then you have grid equipment, making sure that we can help Ukraine connect to the European grid through StatComs and things like that allow flexible integration to the European grid while building substations and transformers and things like that to keep the grid going, and then helping rebuild dams and hydroelectric power and things like that. So that's the first phase, emergency power to keep the lights on through the winter and things like that. The second phase is to help build the grid stronger than it's ever been and really be a model for the rest of the world. And here we're proud of the partnership with DTEC on distributed generation, on wind technology, and advancing those goals together, because we do believe that Ukraine will be the model of a clean energy grid for the future, for the rest of Europe, and frankly, for the rest of the world. And the third is supply chain. We don't want to, we're building this equipment in Europe, we're building in the US, we're building other places in the world, shipping it to Ukraine. We want to get to the point where Ukraine's building this equipment and shipping it to other places. So we're working on partnerships so Ukraine can build transformers, use its factories, use its great workforce to be part of the global supply chain and get to that point too. So that's how we're thinking of it. That's how we're approaching it. I'm thankful for the partnerships here, but a lot of hard work lies ahead of us, and we're committed to make sure that we're succeeding on all these goals.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Hannah. We've heard about support of the United States and G7 group. We've heard about practices of private sector in Ukraine and in other countries. What is the strategy of state agency? Can you elaborate on that, please?
Okay. Thank you, Tatiana, for this question. Maybe very important today to talk about what we are doing now and about our strategy and plans. Okay, but I start from there saying the main principle of EU Repower Plan, the cheapest energy, the one you didn't use. It is very important for us, and we try to reduce pressure on our energy system through implement decarbonization and energy efficiency measures. And first of all, for us, our main principle are to reduce the deficit of electricity and develop of distributed generation, increase RES and alternative energy. What we are doing for development of distributed generation? First of all, the European cogeneration qualification mechanism has been implemented, which exempts high efficient cogeneration plants from excise tax, reducing costs. Second one, licensing of heat production for cogeneration up to 5 megawatts has been cancelled. Next step, what we had done, procedures for putting cogeneration equipment into operation have been simplified. And next step, very important, the import of equipment for the restoration of energy infrastructure is exempt from taxes to Ukraine. Next one, what we are doing to replace natural gas with biofuel. Legislation has been created for the biomethane markets, which open the possibility of its export to the EU. Next step, amendments were made to the gas transport system and gas distribution system codes, integrating biomethane into the network. And national standard for biomethane was implemented, increasing its safety and suitability for transport. And export of biomethane is unlocked. It is very important for Ukraine and for our market. Do you know that the Prime Minister Shmigal and Ursula von der Leyen signed MOU in 2023, and Ukraine is defined as the main strategic partner in synthetic gas. And thanks to these measures, Ukraine has become more attractive for bioenergy investors. It is already planned to launch 7 biomethane plants with a capacity of 111 million cubic meters, which will attract more than 75 million euros of investments. And I hope we will have a time to discuss our financial tools, because we created fund of decarbonization in 2023, and we have a lot of challenges and opportunities, plans, initiatives, and I think we talk about it.
Thank you, Anna. Jeff, we are going back to you. Can you talk a little bit more about concrete initiatives that Bureau initiates to attract more investments into Ukrainian energy system, especially to renewables and grid modernization?
So thank you for the question. There are really two aspects to this. One is the story that Ukraine tells to the rest of the world. And that's why I emphasized in my opening remarks the steps that have been taken on the difficult path of energy sector reform. I know this story probably as well as anybody still working in the US government, because I was in Kyiv in 2014 after the Revolution of Dignity. I saw the enormous demand from civil society to take a economic system that had been built around oligarchic structures and to reorient it in a way that is aligned with Ukraine's aspiration and plan to be a member of the European Union. So these reforms that have taken place, for instance, in Naftogaz, have been critically important, but have to be sustained in terms of corporate governance reform, in terms of transparency, in terms of limiting the ability of any political group to use those energy assets as a tool of economic or political advantage. This is the energy sector in Ukraine historically was one of the two principal vectors of Russian malign influence, the other being the church. Both of those vectors of influence now been broken. In the energy sector, the fact that Ukraine has gone from being 100% dependent on Gazprom imports when I was ambassador to 0% dependent on Russian imports. The fact that Ukrainian companies, including DTEK, are integrating themselves with the European market. So it was an important step, for instance, that NSOE recently raised the cap on Ukrainian energy imports from 1,700 megawatts up to 2,100 megawatts. But equally important, and even more important in my mind, are the increases in Ukraine's export authority, because that helps to bind the two systems closer together. So in this context, what can the United States do? The first is we can be a strong partner with those voices in Ukrainian society who are working to build a future energy system which is fully aligned with Europe. And some of those people are in the room here today. The second thing that we can do is the practical support which we are providing through our finance institutions. So I talked earlier about the assistance monies, most of which comes through USAID. But over the long term, the most powerful tools are going to be our Development Finance Corporation, our Export-Import Bank. So in the energy sector, Historically, OPIC, for instance, one of OPIC's big historic projects in Ukraine was the Holtec nuclear fuel storage facility at Chernobyl. We have tremendous hopes for support to future Ukrainian expansion of its civil nuclear fleet, both large-scale conventional reactors and future small modular reactors. Those are areas where our financial institutions will be active. Similarly, our Development Finance Corporation is working with companies like Honeywell and Vernova, both of which have signed MOUs with DTEC for new energy sector procurements, which are focused on building a greener and more resilient energy system for the future. These are long-term projects, which is why I talked about both the marathon and the sprint. The short-term sprint is to keep the lights on this winter, but we are going to remain focused also on the marathon, which is helping Ukraine to build its future energy system and its future energy prosperity, fully aligned with Ukraine's membership in the European Union.
Thank you. Maxim, we are going back to you. Transition is the environmental necessity, and it is also economic opportunity for Ukraine. But it's impossible to make transition without financial support. And Ukraine is risky. How do you manage to attract financial investors into Ukraine right now during the wartime?
Yes, I think that today building something in Ukraine is a challenge by all aspects, starting with logistics, employees coming from abroad, companies ready to take risk working in Ukraine, and of course, financing. So I always say that this is limited factor for us, and we have to be creative and rely on support of our partners and countries and governments to structure this financing. So, and in general, I think that building something in Ukraine, it's all about partnership. Again, just want to mention that recently we received a grant from French government to build absolutely new application of new technology substation in Bucha. And unfortunately, this small city known to the whole world after what Russian done with Bucha. And now we received this grant to build with GE Vernova, financed by the French government. This is good indication how financing can be structured in partnership. Today, we, as already mentioned, Kiligul wind farm, guarantee for 380 million euro issued by Danish government and through export credit agency IFO. And that's another example how financing can be structured. Today, we are in intensive discussion with DFC, again, with the support of US government and Jeff Pyatt, to finance our projects with GE Vernova supply of gas turbines and building battery storage, and possible. We speak with, just yesterday, we have a roundtable with representative of UK government, talking about UK export facilities from United Kingdom and also Lloyd's as an institution to provide insurance for different kind of insurance for construction. So now we have to be creative in building financial structure so that significant amount of capital can be deployed in Ukraine. And unlocking this problem of access to capital can bring all this project in reality because we have Ukrainian companies, they're on the ground, they not run out of the country 2.5 years ago. They still take the risk and continue their projects and build this project. And what we have in Ukraine is bravery and commitment and, how I say it, execution power. We know how to develop, how to build, how to operate, but we need support in access to capital.
Thank you very much. Let's continue topic of partnership. Roger, what partnerships GE Vernova has in Ukraine and for Ukraine to help to rebuild the energy system?
Well, thank you very much. And I think, as I mentioned earlier, we couldn't do anything without partnership, public-private partnership. It's been a partnership with the State Department, USAID, our counterparts in the European Union to kind of de-risk the environment and to help with the financing. Partnership with companies like DTEC to be on the ground for us. We can produce the technology, but we may not be the best to be on the front line to actually install and operate. So we create, and they know their markets better than we do and what's needed, and we can communicate very clearly. Of course, partnerships with the Ukraine Ministry of Environment and Energy and others to make sure we can solve this together. And I do think we talk a lot about public-private partnerships, but this is really the front line of it. I think this is the best example of a public-private partnership that I've seen. And, you know, when I hear Secretary Pyatt talk and I hear Maxime talk about the financing and the governance parts of it, I think we're solving for that as well. I mentioned earlier how much like we're humbled by the fact that Ukraine has done something no one's ever done before, which is to maintain the grid in a war-torn environment when the grid is being attacked for the first time, civilian energy assets, and is attacking civilians, and how we've learned so much from their ability to manage the engineering and the physical parts of that. But when you think about the contractual part and the financial part and the governance part, it's a similar kind of front line. Like we're all doing this for the first time. A lot of times business people can shake hands on many things and have good intentions and have a good aspiration to do something. But when it gets hard, you kind of walk away and it fizzles out. Here we have this commitment set that we know it's going to be hard. We know going into it, of course, it's going to be hard. Nothing here is normal. But I think everybody up here has this mindset that we're committed to do it. And people come and they say, well, this isn't going to work. Well, let's find another way. But we know we're going to get to the answer at the end of the day. We're all going to be creative. I think everybody on this stage has had to be creative, kind of think outside their comfort zone to make this happen. So just like Ukraine's created precedent on how to do this on the ground, we're creating precedent on how to set up these legal structures. And I think it's really important for Ukraine. I think it's a really important precedent going forward. So we're proud to have been able to do that. More to come. As we think not only through this emergency phase, but through this rebuilding phase and through this phase of how we start to deploy factories and things like that, so we can employ Ukrainians to be part of the supply chain and sell this equipment abroad.
Thanks. Anna, what is the state agency doing to attract both domestic and international investors?
Thank you, Tatiana. I want to continue speech of Maxime. It is very important to track finances for Ukraine, for recovery Ukraine, and for this very important to be transparency for international partnership, politicians and local companies. We created, first of all, we created Fund of Decarbonization in 2023. This law was voted by Parliament, signed by President, and this fund started from the 1st January of 2024. And it is very important for us because this fund is filled from the CO2 tax. And we now have local, domestic, local financing, 1,400 million euro. Hryvnias. But it's not enough now for energy efficiency and decarbonization measures in different spheres of economy, for example, municipality, industry, public buildings, and we try to attract the additional financing from the international financial institution. The fund guarantees a high level of transparency and responsibility in financial management, which increases the confidence of investors and promotes the attraction of additional funds. To us, join now into UNDP and help us, and was filled our fund in last month 500 euro, 500,000 euro. Yes, it was like a pilot project, and we want to open new project with fund and UNDP in the next year, 2025. Main energy projects in the field of solar, wind, and bioenergy. Next one, reduction of CO2 emissions, projects that help Ukrainian fulfill international climate obligations, reimbursement of expenses for loan and leasing obligation for the implementation of energy efficient measures. And last one, debt coverage under ESCA contracts, which increases the attractiveness of such projects for investors. And now we hope that this instrument help us to work and implement more and more our measures among Ukraine and to achieve our national goals. Reduce energy consumption, increase renewable energy sources, alternative energy sources, and reduce CO2 emissions.
Right. Thank you very much. We need to summarize, and I would like to suggest to invent one actionable step that each of you can suggest. That step could help Ukrainians' energy system to transform during the next year.
So I think one area that will be a priority for the United States, and Roger alluded to it, is how we can leverage Ukraine's industrial capacity to accelerate our own supply chain de-risking. So the energy sector, and especially the clean energy sector, is one where we are excessively dependent on one country, China. Ukraine has tremendous capacity because of its historical role in metals, in aerospace, in manufacturing. Ukraine has tremendous capacity to fill in behind there. I was glad to see, for instance, Deputy Prime Minister Serdenko on her LinkedIn page was highlighting a visit she made to a wind turbine pylon manufacturer in Zakarpatska, which had relocated from south central Ukraine. That's the kind of example that we should be looking to replicate over and over again. Not just to satisfy Ukraine's requirements for reconstruction. And let's be clear, when Ukraine gets to the reconstruction phase, Europe is going to take the lead, and it is going to be the largest national reconstruction project that Europe has seen since the Marshall Plan. But also because the world needs more of these commodities to meet our energy transition goals. That, for instance, is why my team has also prioritized our partnership with Ukraine on critical minerals. And I was glad to see the critical minerals chapter of President Zelensky's victory plan. I'm glad to see Senator Graham, who will have a powerful voice in the next US presidential administration, talking about this issue, because it's an area where Ukraine has historical expertise. It's an area that's been dominated by Russian companies and Russian-aligned oligarchs. And it's an area where there's no reason why, for a Europe and a world which is looking for more lithium, more energy minerals, Ukraine shouldn't be thinking about its role in that process as well.
I think what I would say briefly, we've covered a lot, is what weighs on me is every day really matters here. Maxime and I were having this conversation. I think typically things move along at their own pace, and it takes a while for people to get back to each other. Sometimes there's an issue, it takes a while to figure it out, elevate up the chain, that kind of thing. And Maxime and I were talking, like, we don't have time for that. If we run into a problem, just let me know, send me a WhatsApp. I will go to our CEO that day, and we have to move forward. Every day really matters here. Obviously, we have the winter. Obviously, we have a very uncertain environment. And we also have the fact, as a global company that's in 100 countries, the rest of the world is going through their own versions of an energy transition right now. And as I said, we don't have this equipment sitting on shelves. There's years of backlog, and Ukraine already other dealing with. So we want to make sure Ukraine remains the priority. It continues to be the most important thing we're doing. And it's on me. I think it's on all of us just to make sure we're putting every day to use. We're making progress every day. And we have that kind of commitment mindset that it's going to take creativity. It's not going to be a straight line. Nothing is here, but we're all committed together to be really creative, think outside the box, and find ways to make this all work.
So for us, coming year is year of partnerships. So we want to bring as many partners as possible to Ukraine, partners in our project, partners in financial structures, partners in supply chain. I think future of Ukraine and future of our energy depends on partnerships between local companies and new companies coming from countries supporting us. And of course, for the tech, next year is year of construction. So we have extensive program of building battery storage, wind parks, gas turbines. We will start our program of long-term modernization of our grid. And I think that next year we will build a lot. And I want that all this construction phase will be done together with our new partners.
Thank you. We will continue our project, which we launched in 2023-2024. We will expand our cooperation with allies countries and international financial institution, because we understand that the first step in energy efficiency you could do without money and financing, but next one you should financing. Cheapest now for recovery. And we signed with Denmark new agreement and launch new project in this year. And I hope in the next year we could sign the same agreement with the Norwegian government for energy efficiency and decarbonization measures in Ukraine for industry. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I believe that investments are impossible without strategy, and we've heard a lot of strategies and plans for the future. I wish all us the best. I want this war to stop. And anyway, our people are resilient, our businesses are resilient, and with the support of our partners, we will be able to survive. Thank you so much. Make a picture.
I'm going to meet with you later today. Yes. Yes, I have an appointment at 5. Right. So I want to talk more about battery storage. Okay. Yeah. Yes.
Раз. Раз. I've turned the speaker off.
Раз, 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 раз. Раз, 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 раз. Раз, 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 раз. Раз, 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 раз.
Have you start with the name? Don't get out of camera. I'm Jeff Hyatt. I'm the Assistant Secretary of State for Transportation. One of the things you said is about the rebuilding of trains, solar, wind,
Раз, 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 раз. Раз, раз, раз.
technology.
Раз, 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 раз. Раз, 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 раз. Раз, 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 раз.
Current scope. And the next few years, it's part of
Be
it.
here tomorrow?
Especially.
Okay, what is your name?
Europe is going to implement.
Anton, thank you very much, Anton.
Just to see this. So.
No, 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 I understand. We waited at the right moment. So number 7 we'll get tomorrow.
All right. It was empty. It's okay. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Are compliant. So that means.
Take it from this side.
Second, because Ukraine's fossil energy resources are beginning to decline. That's natural. People forget, I mean, in many ways, Ukraine was